I shouldn't even be telling you this. Honestly, if I had any sense left, I'd shut my mouth and let the memory rot where it belongs. But some things crawl under your skin and refuse to die. And this is one of them. Everyone's been to Walmart. It's the most ordinary place in America. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, aisles stretching on forever, half-empty shelves of discount cereal, kids throwing tantrums in carts, while exhausted parents just try to make it through the checkout line. You go there for toothpaste, toilet, paper, maybe a gallon of milk. Boring, harmless, forgettable. But if you've ever thought Walmart was boring, think again. Because the one in Galveston, the one I worked at for a little while, wasn't boring. It wasn't harmless. It was wrong. You see, people think of Walmart as eternal daylight. Doesn't matter if it's 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. The place looks exactly the same. Bright, artificial, safe. But when the clock passes midnight, that illusion starts to peel away. The aisles stretch too long. The lights flicker at the edges, and you start noticing things you really shouldn't. I know what you're probably thinking. I'm exaggerating, spinning some creepy story for the internet, and I wish that was true. God, I wish that was true. But the truth is, I'm only one of the few left who'll even talk about it. Most of the others either keep quiet or well, let's just say they don't last long. So here's my warning to you. If you scare easy, if you don't like the idea of carrying something you can't scrub out of your head, stop listening now, because once you know what happens after midnight in Galveston's Walmart, you'll never look at that blue sign the same way again. But if you're the kind of person who thinks they can handle it, if you need to know the forbidden, then fine, you asked for it. Just don't say I didn't warn you. It started on my very first overnight shift. I was just a normal guy looking for extra cash, stocking shelves, zoning the aisles, doing the usual grunt work. Nothing special. Nothing scary. At least, that's what I told myself when I clocked in. But by the time the store closed to the public and the doors locked behind the last customer, I realized I had stepped into something I wasn't supposed to see, something I'll never be able to unseen. And that's where this story begins. When I first got the job, I didn't think much of it. Just another overnight gig to keep the bills from stacking too high. The manager called it easy money. Stock a few shelves, keep the place tidy, clock out before dawn. I figured I could handle that. My first night was almost cheerful in its simplicity. The hum of the fluorescent lights echoed above us, steady and unchanging, like some artificial heartbeat keeping the store alive. The floors shined a little too perfectly. The aisles were lined with neatly stacked products, and my coworkers greeted me with tired but genuine smiles. In the break room, the smell of greasy pizza clung to the air. Someone had ordered a couple of boxes to kick off the shift, and we all crowded around the flimsy plastic table. The conversation wasn't anything special, just gossip about customers, complaints about long hours, and the kind of sarcastic jokes only retail workers understand. I remember thinking, this isn't so bad. Could even be fun. But then the little things started to catch my attention, like the back exit near the garden center. It was locked, always. Padlocked from the inside, which didn't make sense. Fire. Code says exits should stay clear. But every time I walked by, I'd see that heavy chain looped through the handles. Nobody talked about it. and when I asked a supervisor once, he just shrugged and changed the subject, or the cameras. There were plenty of them, sure, but not where you'd expect. The front aisles were practically over-monitored, yet whole sections of the back, especially near aisles 12 through 15, were strangely uncovered, blind spots left wide open. I noticed, too, how the conversations in the break room dipped whenever the clock pushed past midnight, like everyone grew more careful with their words, more aware of the silence pressing in around us. It was around 2:45 a.m. when I first heard the joke. We were unpacking boxes in the electronics aisle, and one of the older guys, Rick, leaned over to me with a smirk. "You're new, so I'll give you the golden rule," he said. "Don't go past aisle 14 after 3 a.m. The others laughed, but not the way you laugh at a dumb joke, more like they were relieved someone else said it before the silence got too heavy. I rolled my eyes and asked what that was supposed to mean. Rick just grinned and said, "You'll see. Or maybe you won't. Better if you don't." Everyone chuckled, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes, and for the rest of the night, whenever I drifted too close to that end of the store, someone always found an excuse to call me back. At the time, I brushed it off. Hazing the new guy, I thought. A little inside joke to make me paranoid. I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction. Of course, I thought they were just messing with me. I thought wrong. It was my third shift when I started noticing things that didn't fit. At first, I told myself I was just tired. Overnight work has a way of scrambling your brain. Hours blur, noises echo, shadows stretch in ways they shouldn't. But some things, they were harder to explain away. The first was the carts. I was restocking near the frozen food section when I heard the squeak of wheels on linoleum. I turned, expecting to see Rick pushing a cart, but the aisle was empty. I shrugged, bent back down, and kept working. That's when the sound started again. Long, slow, deliberate. When I stood up, a cart rolled into view coming from the opposite end of the aisle. Nobody was behind it, no one even close. The thing rattled to a stop just a few feet away like it had been pushed toward me. I checked over my shoulder, waiting for laughter, for someone to jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" But the aisle was dead, quiet. By the next hour, things escalated. The frozen food section, the one that was always colder than the rest of the store, reeked of something foul. I opened one of the glass doors and froze. Packages of frozen chicken had thawed completely, dripping red liquid down the shelves and pooling onto the floor. Only, it didn't look like the pale water from defrosted meat. This was darker, thicker, blood. I slammed the door shut, stomach turning, and stumbled back when I dragged one of the managers to show him the freezers were back to normal. Perfectly frosted, neat rows of rock-solid boxes. Not a drop of liquid in sight. He gave me a look like I was wasting his time, muttered something about new guy nerves, and walked away. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But then came the intercom. We all hated that damn thing. The way it would crackle out announcements about price checks or register calls. But around 3:10 a.m., it sputtered on with a static so loud it made my teeth ache. Every worker froze, staring up at the black speakers bolted into the ceiling. The hiss of static dragged on, long enough for me to feel my skin crawl. Then it cut, abrupt, sharp. One of the women in produce, Carla, picked up the phone to check the booth. Nobody was there. That's when Luis pulled me aside. He was a quiet guy, mid-20s, worked nights to pay for college. He looked pale, eyes darting to make sure no one else was listening. "You've seen them, right?" he whispered. "Seen what?" I asked. "The shadows. They don't belong to anyone. They're wrong." I laughed, maybe a little too loudly, trying to shake the tension. "Yeah, sure. The boogeyman loves rollback prices." But Luis didn't laugh. His voice dropped even lower, like he was afraid the store itself might overhear. "I'm serious. They follow you, even when the aisles are empty. Sometimes they stand between the shelves. Sometimes they move when you don't. Just don't go near aisle 14, not alone." I tried brushing him off, but the fear in his eyes wasn't the kind you fake. He believed every word. And maybe, if I'd taken him more seriously, things would have been different. I didn't know then, but those jokes, my dumb attempt at dark humor, were my last chance to laugh. Because after that night, nothing about Walmart would ever be ordinary again. By the end of my first week, I started realizing there were things no one said out loud, but everyone seemed to know. It wasn't written on the break room bulletin board. It wasn't part of the safety handbook. But I could feel it. Rules, unspoken, but heavy. I'd catch coworkers giving each other those looks. The kind you share when a secret is floating between you, but you're too afraid to put it into words. Sometimes, in the middle of restocking, someone would pause mid-motion, glance up at the ceiling and quietly move to a different aisle without explanation. Other times, they'd whisper quick warnings, half jokes that felt too specific to be funny. One night, Carla leaned toward me while we stacked soda crates. "If you ever hear your name on the intercom after 2:33, don't answer. Don't even look up." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She just shook her head, lips pressed tight. "Just don't." I laughed it off like I had with Luis. Another piece of night shift folklore, another prank for the new guy. But that night, at 2:34 a.m. exactly, the intercom popped. Static rattled through the store, harsh and sudden. Then, under it, my name, soft, drawn out, like someone trying the shape of my syllables for the very first time. Alex. The sound wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. Louder than the hum of the fluorescents, louder than the distant whir of the floor buffer polishing tiles, louder even than my heartbeat. I froze, box of cereal in my hands. My eyes darted to my coworkers, but none of them looked up. Not one. They kept working like nothing had happened, hands moving too fast, too deliberate, like they were pretending not to hear it. The intercom hissed again. "Alex, come here." I swallowed, throat dry. My brain told me it had to be a prank. Maybe someone in the booth thought it was funny. Maybe they were hazing me, trying to spook the rookie. But then the lights flickered. Not all at once, not randomly. They blinked in sequence, one overhead fixture after another, stretching down the aisle in front of me. Flick, 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 like breadcrumbs, lighting a path deeper into the store. I took a step forward before I even realized it, box slipping from my hands. It hit the floor with a dull thud, but the sound felt far away. My body was moving without permission, feet drawn to the rhythm of those lights. Flick, flick, flick. "Alex." The intercom breathed again, coaxing. Somewhere in the back of my skull, reason screamed. This wasn't right. None of it was right. but the pull was so strong, like I was a thread being tugged by invisible fingers, winding me deeper and deeper between the shelves. And then, a hand clamped around my wrist. I spun, heart hammering, and found Luis. His face was pale, eyes wide with terror. "Don't you ever follow it," he hissed. His voice shook. "Do you hear me? You don't go where it wants you to. Not if you want to leave this place alive," I stammered, tried to ask him what the hell was going on, but he dragged me back a step, then another, away from the beckoning path of lights. The intercom clicked off with a sharp snap. The lights steadied, humming with their usual sterile glow, and just like that, the spell was broken. All around us, the store carried on. The floor buffer whirred down by electronics. A register beeped as someone scanned a barcode to check inventory. Normal, everyday sounds, wrapping me in a fragile illusion of safety. But under it, I swear I could still hear something else. Whispers, so faint, I almost convinced myself I was imagining them. Words that never made sense, slipping between the aisles like drafts of cold air. That was the first time I realized a Walmart had rules. Rules I wish I'd followed. The next week, Luis didn't show up for shift change. At first, no one said anything. People just worked faster, heads down, movements sharper. But I noticed. Luis was always there, always the first one clocked in, the one warning me about rules, and now his time card was empty. I thought maybe he was sick, maybe he quit. But then, walking out after sunrise, I saw his car still parked at the far end of the lot. Same spot as always. Rusted red Honda, one bumper sticker peeling off. It hadn't moved. The following night, I asked around casually, like it was nothing. "Hey, where's Luis? He not on nights anymore." Carla froze for a fraction of a second, then shook her head too quickly. "Probably transferred." But her voice cracked on, "Probably." Another coworker muttered, "Don't worry about it," and walked away. The store felt colder after that. I couldn't let it go. Luis had grabbed me that night, saved me from following the lights. I owed him something, at least an answer. So I checked the schedule board in the break room. His name was still there. No transfer, no replacement. Just Luis, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. But his slot remained empty. When I pressed harder, asking one of the assistant managers, they gave me a tight smile and said, clocking error, as if that explained why his car was still out there, collecting dust. Finally, I got desperate enough to ask one of the guys in security. Not on shift, never on shift. I caught him outside, smoking by the dumpster. At first, he wouldn't talk, just dragged on his cigarette, eyes darting around like the walls had ears. But then, he muttered, "Check the tapes, that was all." He flicked the butt and walked off. So I did. I waited until the following night when the office was empty, slipped into the little room with its buzzing monitors. The hum of electronics filled the cramped air. I rewound the feed from the night Luis disappeared. At first, it was boring, normal. He was on screen, restocking cleaning supplies, chatting with Carla, laughing. Just a guy working another shift. Then around 3:10 a.m., I saw it. Luis walked into aisle 14. The camera caught him stepping past the shelves. Mop buckets, bleach bottles, the edge of a rolling ladder. His figure moved deeper into frame. And then, nothing. He never came out. I rewound again, played it slower, frame by frame. Luis enters the aisle. The shelves block him for a second. And then, gone. No exit, no shadow, no blur of movement, just gone. The hair on my neck stood straight. I watched it 3 more times. Each time my stomach turned tighter. He hadn't walked away. He hadn't hidden. He had been swallowed. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself, so the next morning I confronted the manager. I told him I'd seen the footage. Told him Luis didn't just skip town. He disappeared. The manager didn't blink. Didn't even look surprised. Instead, he leaned close, voice low enough that only I could hear. "If you want to keep this job," he said, "drop it." His eyes bored into mine, flat, cold, warning. That was it. He walked away, clipboard under his arm, as if he hadn't just confirmed my worst fear. After that, no one mentioned Luis again. His name stayed on the board a few more days, then vanished like it had never been there. But his car was still in the lot, and every time I passed AL-14, I swore I could hear something moving just beyond the shelves, like the store had taken him, like it was still hungry. The night it finally happened wasn't planned. The power went out around 2:50 a.m., a blackout. At first, the store was only shadows. The hum of fluorescent lights cut to silence. Emergency lights flickered on, thin red glows washing the aisles like veins under skin. And in that blood-tinted glow, I saw it. Aisle 14, empty, waiting. My chest tightened, but the blackout gave me something I hadn't had before. Cover. No cameras, no watching eyes. If I was ever going to know what happened to Luis, to the others, this was it. I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not dust, not chemicals. Something older, like wet concrete and iron. The shelves looked wrong, warped, tilted, leaning inward like they were folding in on themselves. The merchandise didn't belong. On one shelf sat a box of cereal, its colors faded and edges soft, like it had been there for decades. Next to it, cans of soda with designs I'd only ever seen in old commercials. Rust sealed the tops shut. I blinked, moved further in. A few steps later, I passed toys. Plastic, still sealed in boxes, but from the 80s. The packaging had yellowed, the price stickers marked in handwriting, not print. Every brand I knew looked familiar, but off. Oreos with logos I'd never seen. Candy bars wrapped in waxy paper, like relics. Boxes of detergent with smiling families, their hairstyles frozen in another decade. I ran my hand across one shelf and pulled back with the dust caked under my fingernails. Dust that shouldn't have been there, not in a Walmart open 24 hours a day. Then the whispers started. At first, faint, like the low static hum of a walkie-talkie. Then clearer. Here, this way. The voices crawled into my ears, soft, coaxing. I spun, but the aisle was empty. Don't leave. That's when I froze. Because it wasn't random voices. It was my own voice, whispering from the dark, calling me forward. My breath caught. I pressed deeper, drawn between shelves that seemed to stretch longer than they had any right to. My steps echoed hollow, like I was walking through a tunnel, not an aisle. Something crunched under my shoe. I looked down and saw a notebook, tattered, water-stained, its cover peeling. It had been shoved behind a row of cereal boxes, like someone wanted it hidden. I picked it up. My hand shook as I opened the first page. The writing inside wasn't neat, scrawled, desperate. Multiple hands, multiple inks. Notes stacked on top of notes, like a chorus of voices, all trying to speak at once. Dates filled the margins, some from years ago, some from decades, and always the same patterns, missing. No clock out. Gone during night shift. Car still in lot. 1. Page stopped me cold. It read, "It only feeds after 3. My skin crawled. I flipped further. Names filled the lines, scratched out one after the other. Employees who never came back. I recognized a few. Luis's name was the last written. His wasn't scratched out. My heart hammered as the whispers pressed closer. Stay. With us. Join. I snapped the notebook shut, clutching it to my chest. The shelves groaned around me like the store itself was breathing. The floor shifted under my feet, soft, spongy, like I was standing on something alive. And that's when I realized this wasn't just denial. It wasn't just a glitch in the layout or some old merchandise. The Walmart wasn't built here. It was built over something that had been waiting a long time. The notebook wasn't the only thing I found. Later that night, when the lights sputtered back to life and the cameras hummed again, I slipped into the employee records room. No one goes in there unless corporate calls for audits. The shelves were crammed with old binders, water-damaged boxes, and outdated rosters stacked like tombstones. I started digging, and what I found didn't make sense. There were names, hundreds of them, dating back before the Walmart was even built. Old staff photos, black and white, and their uniforms nothing like ours. One binder wasn't even marked Walmart at all. It said St. Mary's Care Home, but I knew that name. Everyone from Galveston does. It was the asylum that stood here before 1900. The one they said got torn apart by the hurricane. Except it wasn't gone. Buried in those records were lists of patients transferred with no destinations, just names and dates. Beside some of them, one phrase appeared again and again in red ink. Voice drowned. I felt my stomach knot, because my grandmother used to tell stories about the Great Storm of 1900, the one that killed thousands when the sea swallowed the island. She'd say, late at night, when the windows rattled in the wind, "If you ever hear voices calling from the water, don't answer. They're the drowned, looking for company." And now, here it was, scrawled into corporate records, like a warning disguised as bookkeeping. That was when the pieces clicked. The Walmart wasn't just built here by accident. It was cover. This entire store, every aisle, every camera, every late night shift wasn't for customers. It was containment. They weren't keeping shoplifters out. They were keeping something else in. And if you think I'm exaggerating, if you think I'm spinning ghost stories, then I'm going to break the rule. Of every creepypasta you've ever heard, I'm going to talk directly to you. If anyone from Galveston is watching this right now, check your store, check your cameras. You'll see the gaps in the tapes, the red hours nobody explains. And if you've ever worked the night shift, you may have already heard them. The whispers, the drowned voices, They don't start all at once. First, it's a cough in an empty aisle, a cart rolling on its own, a voice that sounds just like yours, calling your name from the next row. That's how it begins. But the deeper truth, this Walmart isn't haunted. It isn't cursed. It's a cage. And every night after 3 a.m., the cracks in the bars get wider. I swore I wouldn't go back. After what I read, after what I pieced together, I told myself I'd never set foot near aisle 14 again. But the store has a way of pulling you in. That night, the PA crackled to life. No announcement, no music, just static. Then, underneath the hiss, a voice I recognized. Louis. I froze. It was faint, but clear enough. Roll back, roll back, roll back. I don't even remember walking there. My legs just carried me down the familiar rows, past chips and soda, past frozen dinners humming behind glass, and then aisle 14. It was darker than the others, like the lights couldn't reach it, and standing halfway down was Luis, or what used to be Luis. He was facing the shelf, motionless, stocking cans that weren't there. His arms jerked like a broken animatronic, repeating the same motion over and over. His voice was low, monotone, chewing the same word into nothing. Roll back, roll back, roll back. I called his name. His head had snapped toward me, and his eyes, oh God, his eyes weren't eyes anymore. They were hollow sockets, black pits that swallowed the fluorescent glow. His mouth hung open, but when he spoke, it wasn't his voice. It was mine. Why did you come back? Then the lights went out. Total black. The kind that isn't just absence, but presence. Like something pressed in against my skin, thick and alive. I heard it before I saw it. Heavy, deliberate movement. Something shifting between shelves, brushing against steel, knocking boxes to the floor. Each step too slow, too heavy, like it had all the time in the world. I backed up. My hand scraped against the shelf, grasping for anything, but the sound kept circling closer and closer, like it knew I couldn't see it. Then, flicker. The lights stuttered on for half a second, just long enough for me to catch glimpses. An arm, too long, jointed wrong, trailing down past its knees. A face, or something wearing one, that rippled like static on an old TV screen. A body that didn't move like flesh, but like film spliced together wrong. And then dark again, the whispering started. Not from one place, but from everywhere. Dozens of voices, no, hundreds. All of them me, different tones, different ages. My voice stacked and layered until it was unbearable. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the whispers weren't in the air anymore. They were inside my head. Stay, work, stock, roll back, roll back. Something brushed past me. The shelf shook. My chest went tight, my lungs squeezing like the air had been vacuumed out of the world. And then, nothing. I blacked out. When my eyes opened again, I was sitting in the break room. The humming of the vending machine was back. The fluorescent buzz overhead. The smell of burnt coffee in the pot. On the table in front of me, my punch card. Stamped. Perfect. Like I had clocked out on time. Like nothing happened. But when I picked it up, my hands were trembling too hard to hold it. Because the stamp wasn't just time and date. It was 3 words. In red ink. Roll back. Roll back. Roll back. I quit the next morning. I didn't even pick up my last check, just walked out of that Walmart and told myself I'd never look back. But it didn't end there. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just a single sheet of paper inside. It was a schedule, my name, my employee ID. You're scheduled. No shift times, no department, just that. I ripped it up and threw it away, but they keep coming. Every week, another envelope. No postmark, no stamp. Just there, slipped under my door, like someone hand-delivered it. Always the same 2 words. You're scheduled. I moved apartments, changed my number, burned the uniform. But it doesn't matter. The letters find me. And the thing is, it's not just paper anymore. Sometimes late at night, I hear the faint hum of fluorescent lights when I know every bulb in my apartment is off. I smell that same waxed tile floor, the same stale popcorn from the snack counter, like the store is bleeding into my home. And the intercom. God, the intercom. It starts as static, low, barely there, but it always grows. A hiss that fills the room until it drowns out everything else. And sometimes it says my name. Not just my name, but the way I say it. My own voice calling me back, like Luis's voice did that night. I don't answer. I don't dare answer. Because if you answer, I don't think you come back. Listen to me. If you've watched this far, if you've heard my story, take this seriously. If you ever hear your name over a Walmart PA after hours, don't answer. Please. Beat of silence, static crackles faint in background. And if anyone from Galveston is watching this, check your store, check your cameras, check aisle 14. Because maybe I'm not the only one scheduled. Maybe it's all of us. Voice drops, urgent, almost whisper. And if you think this was bad, check out the video on screen now. But only if you can handle it.